$250,000. That's how much the average dental practice loses every year to empty chairs, no-shows, last-minute cancellation, gaps that just sit there. Casper's Opportunity Finder constantly checks your schedule and sees every gap the second it opens and helps your team fill it with one single click. And for every open dental user, it's completely free. Go to meetcasper.com/register to download it today, because profit isn't the opposite of purpose. It's what funds it.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Making of podcast. My name is Collin Samri. I'm one of the hosts around here, and I have just a really cool doctor again to introduce to everyone today. So I would love to just introduce Dr. Brian. He has a really cool story. We actually talked I don't know, was it back in December or November? And your story is just so unique, I think. But you had so much insight. And so I'm really excited to chat with you today and just see what you can help with our community. So welcome, Dr. Brian. Thank you for being here.
Great. Thank you very much for having me.
Do you know what we're going to do next? It's just going to be a quick this or that game. Nothing too crazy for you today. But would you rather be the driver in a car or the passenger?
I would say the driver.
Okay. I thought maybe, I feel like the wives and the women's always want to be the passenger, but I don't know, maybe that's just me. Are you a sweet or a savory guy?
Savory. I used to be sweet when I was little, but now I'm more savory.
And then for books, would you rather have a physical book or an audio book?
Audiobook. I
Okay.
think being able to do it while I'm driving has been the best way to absorb content. Right now, if I pick up a book, I'm about 2 paragraphs in before I fall asleep. So
You're a dad, right?
yeah, I've got 4 boys, 14, 12, and twins that are 8.
Oh my gosh, 4 boys. I thought Ashley had a lot, but you got the twins at the end. So that was a surprise.
Yeah, we went for the girl and got twin boys. So that was definitely a shocker. It was about 3 months into buying the startup practice in 2016 that we found out we were in for some more work. So it has been fantastic, and obviously a journey that I'm, trying to become more well-rounded in my life, as well as being a dad and taking care of myself and also my team. And it's been really cool to see them grow up. And we've got a couple of birthdays going on right now. And one of the things that we're doing is that when they turn 12 is we're taking them on a trip with just, mom and dad and the kid, to kind of get them a chance to get some attention and also create some memories, and realize that we only have a couple more years before that out of the nest. So trying to make the most of it we can. So
I love that. So your 12-year-old, where are you taking him?
he wants to learn how to do fly fishing. So we're going to go to Colorado for 3 days and going to learn how to fly fish.
That's so fun. Are you guys big fishers at all in your family?
We do like to go out to June Lake or Mammoth, once or twice a year. My wife has a very big family, so there's usually 32 of us that go adventure. And yeah, we do occasionally. I wouldn't say I'm good at catching, but I'm good at untangling lines for the boys.
That's the most important part.
Yeah, right.
Taking the fish off the hook and putting the worm on, right?
Yes, exactly. Not quite like the relaxing fisherman picture you imagine, but we still have a good time.
I love that. My 14-year-old is huge into fishing. He just loves it. And so I've learned over the years, but now he does it all himself. And so he takes the fish off and I don't have to worry about touching it.
Perfect.
It's a win-win for me. Yeah.
There you go.
Cool. Okay. Well, let's just dive right into kind of your beginning in dentistry, how you got started. Are you a first-gen dentist? Do you have any dentists in your family? Just give me the very beginnings for you of becoming a dentist.
Sure. I actually hated going to the dentist when I was little, but I got recruited to play volleyball at University of Pacific, and they said they were known for having great dentists or a great dental school. When I was actually an undergrad, I looked into the dental school and actually really loved everything it was about in terms of being creative, working close to home, having a direction if I was going to study hard in school, what am I going to do with everything? And also being able to help people out and be creative and know that that future looked like kind of a promising future to make impact. And so I decided to attend dental school after taking 5 months off to backpack around the world, and thought maybe orthodontist was what I wanted. And then after getting dental school, I really enjoyed the general dentistry, but still could do Invisalign and some of that. But the AACD, American Academy of Cosmetic Dentistry, was what I thought the direction I wanted to go in. So I went to two of those conferences, one in my senior year of dental school and one when I graduated. And then I opened up a practice in Laguna Niguel maybe a year and a half into school. I was just renting some rooms and had my wife work the front desk. And we lasted maybe about 6 months until the owner doctor, which we thought was an orthodontist, wanted $30,000 cash from me. So I said, what do I need $30,000 for? He said, well, to make sure you're committed to me. And I said, well, I've given up my jobs. My whole life savings is here. I'm here till midnight every night. My whole life is in here. And so then I got an email when I got home that they didn't trust me anymore. And so they locked me out of the office. So then I had to call the cops to come get my stuff. And when the cops came in, he ran. And then about a year later, it turned out he was on the news for the rolled sleeve bandit for robbing banks. I guess he was the reason why my DEA license got flagged because I was getting all these prescription drugs called under my license. It turns out he was doing that, and then he got into doing drugs with the Crips and owed them money, and so he would rob banks during the day to pay them back. And he was, living the ideal life in Newport Beach with Range Rovers, three beautiful kids, family, member of a church, and all of a sudden it was a real wake-up call to my wife and I about what's important in life. And so we said, you know what, it's more important for us to raise good kids and live an honest life than to worry about any of this other stuff. So let's move back home to about an hour north of Los Angeles and let's just, simplify life and let's just do the right thing. And I'm so glad that what we were kind of learning that we call pitfalls or hurdles or stumbles in life, all of a sudden we look back and go, maybe those were kind of good teachings or lessons for us to become a better person or redirect or to make sure we don't make those mistakes again. So, of anything, it was kind of a good experience right off in my career to kind of realize that just a handshake and trusting someone isn't the best move when you're talking about business and numbers. And it was a really hard wake up call to the real world right off the bat, to tell you the least. So, that kind of started off my journey of like, oh crap, what are we going to do now? So I just got jobs as an associate, went to corporate dentistry, and realized this is definitely not for me. I lasted about 6 months, and I'm like, I can't practice like this. Taking home zero pay for working the whole day because it was all covered under the HMOs. And then the dentist next to me is like, well, you just look at what's covered on their plan and then diagnose what's not there, and that's how we make money. I'm like, I'm not about to do that. I got some jobs at some private practices and absolutely loved it, but there was no chance for me to buy in or have a long-term career. So there was a practice down the street that the dentist lost his license and it sat there for 10 months. And there was 2 half days of hygiene. They were a fee-for-service practice, had the best cosmetic work in town. And I told my wife, like, hey, at least this is a plant where I can put my feet down, my roots down, and kind of grow from there. And so 2 half days a week, working as an associate. Then I bought another office in town 2 years later and merged them together. And then all of a sudden, the volume started. If you always think, I just need patience in the chair and I'll get busier and then everything's going to be fine. Then I realized that I needed more space and I needed an associate. So I started having some coaching, looking at some numbers, and then we expanded to the suite next door. And that way I could have an associate as well as me working in two hygienists. And then we got shut down with COVID the day we were supposed to be able to use the new space. And then 5 of my 10 employees came back pregnant from COVID. So it was definitely a whirlwind of trying to learn of how to run a business, yet manage the balance of having great employees and a team. And how do you make that all work? I think the biggest wake up call for me was bickering and fighting between the office of realizing that who the hell is running this place? If I'm focused on doing such great dental work and I'm working 5 to 6 days a week, taking no lunches, who's running this? Who's giving the team direction? Who's defining where we're going? Where's the accountability and the teamwork and the connection and communication? And I started realizing that this is no longer about me doing beautiful cosmetic work. This is about me creating a wonderful team. And so seeing you and Ashley and the bond you guys have and what you're doing for creating a stability or a spine for your practice to thrive off of is such a remarkable thing that you guys have done. And it's taken me a long while to get here of balancing being the clinician and all the patients want to see me and my associate versus stepping back and then running the place. So I joined the Bulletproof Mastermind group and started realizing that there's a lot of things I didn't know about in terms of being a leader and looking at numbers and accountability and not micromanaging, but check-ins. And as soon as I did that, I found some insurance fraud and some embezzling. And as soon as I was supposed to start like stepping back and like not micromanaging, I was like, well, wait, you guys don't even share the mail up front? I guess one of the ladies was just hiding the mail under the keyboard and wouldn't let the other one touch it. So I said, okay, well, as soon as I'm supposed to like empower everyone else, now I got to say, okay, by the way, we have to share the mail key. So I was trying to struggle between how do I empower and back off, but yet how do I make sure that things are getting done well?
You said that your wife was helping you in the very beginning, right? In that
Correct.
practice where the doctor was doing all sorts of shady things. Did she come help you when you started these new practices? Or did you
Well, at
take
the
on
time
the
we had
team?
then 4 kids under 6 years of age.
Okay,
So
okay.
there was enough of managing at home before any of that other stuff.
I see, I see. So she
Yeah.
transitioned to managing your household
Yes.
instead of the practice.
Yes.
Okay, okay.
Keeping the
So
foreground.
then these new practices that you had that you merged, you said there was two hygienists, but then did you inherit some of the front office that was there too? Or were these people that you
Yeah.
had hired?
Good question. So I inherited the front office,
Okay.
and then his other two hygienists had already decided they were going to, one was going to move out of state and one was going to join a
Mm,
different practice. They were working at part-time.
okay.
And then one assistant that decided not to stay on. So it was kind of a healthy boost. We went from 2 days a week to all of a sudden 5 days a week overnight.
Yeah.
It was just a
That's
doctor that was a fantastic dentist that just got tired and health-wise and stress just got to the point where like, I'm just going to close my doors.
hmm
I was like,
we never
"Whoa,
hear
wait,
that, right?
before you do that, you've worked your whole life to build these
Yeah.
patience and trust." And then, I was very thankful that I was able to carry on his legacy and keep it going. And he still comes to get his hygiene appointments at our office, so we still get, stay in touch, and it's really great. But I also have learned from a lot of these other practices how trying to hold the entire practice on your own shoulders, how much of a beat down and a stress that it can do to an individual. And now
hmm
learning that the more people you can rely on and help take that pressure off, the better off we all are.
hmm
So that's kind of where I found the book Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell when I started saying, how am I going to do all this if I'm only one person and I need to help include other people in all of this office running? How am I going to do
hmm
that? And so it became a huge shift for me in terms of how do I look at things? How do I allow people to help and have expectations that even though it wasn't done by myself, he has the phrase 80% done by someone else is 100% freaking awesome. And just lowering from 100% to 80% is a very hard thing for a lot of us.
hmm
But then when you
hmm
realize that 80% was done without me doing anything, what a sense of freedom.
Yeah.
The sense of like being able to breathe and not take the pressure of everything, having the responsibility of your whole team, their families, your family, everything being on your shoulders. It just got to a point with my health of like, going to the doctor and finding out all these things in terms of blood pressure, in terms of stress levels, cortisol levels, energy, like it just wasn't a path I wanted to go down.
Yeah.
And so I knew I had to make a change. And all of a sudden, this became about survival in terms of thriving instead of trying to please everyone.
hmm
So this became a time where I said, if this is going to be about making what's ideal and what's possible, I went to a Bulletproof conference in Arizona and heard Paul Vigario from Surf CT speak. And he's all about what would be your ideal practice if anything was possible. And it really got me thinking, like, I've got all these ideas of what I want it to be, but how does that work with insurance and like ideal team members and balancing this all out? How am I going to do this? And then saw about GBT, which is guided biofilm therapy by EMS, which is like a way of seeing the biofilm with disclosing solution and then using warm water and erythritol to remove all the biofilm. So no longer thinking of hygiene as calculus removal, but more as
hmm
disease prevention and bacteria that are creating the inflammation response. And the host response of bone loss is something we can actually stop. So what we did, which was kind of really unique, was I worked backwards because I could never hit my 3.3 goal of hygiene being contracted with three insurance companies.
hmm
It just wasn't possible. So what I did is I said, well, I'm just going to make the ideal method where I'm going to make all my fees the same for apparel maintenance, SPT, Profi. Everything is the same. All my checkup x-rays the same. All my exams are the same. New patient recall doesn't matter. I said, I'm not going to
Okay.
be constricted by insurance anymore. If Delta's not going to send the check to us and we have to have the patient pay in full time of service, why don't we just do that across the board? We had a call from the collections agency Trojan that said in California they're no longer going to allow them to go after patients for any balances on their account. I said, well, what am I supposed to do? Just write off this $50,000 accounts receivable? They said, yeah, we're not going to help you anymore because some of the laws passed to start protecting people from being chased after medical and dental bills.
Oh, I didn't know
So I
that.
said, well, there's so many changes going on right now. I'm just going to put it on paper. What does this look like? And we're going to go for it. So
Mm-hmm.
what that allowed me to do is if I could get my fees for the cleaning to be the exact same, because I was tired of one spouse saying, how come I'm paying more for periodontal maintenance or SBT? Because my spouse is a pro fee. I was looking at my overhead costs for my hygienists and supplies and materials wasn't changing. So I said,
Mm-hmm.
you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, if my hygienist is making this much, 3.3 time is this much. That's their goal for the day for collections. And then
Mm-hmm.
how do I make it where that's possible? And then I have a hygienist working 5 days a week. Well, I can't go over 8 hours. Then I'm overtime every day. So then I'm like, well, then they're going to see 7 patients a day, have half an hour for a morning huddle, 15 minutes before lunch, 15 minutes at the end of the day to check the numbers and get out on time. So then how do you hit that number with only seeing 7 patients? And then part of what I do is as I have an assistant that helps with the hygienist, and then we have an extra
Okay.
room to be able to seat them on time and balance that and flow. All of a sudden, it was like, holy cow, like these numbers are never going to add up. $15,000 for the GBT and maintenance and costs and an assistant extra room. There's no way I'm losing money. And
Mm-hmm.
when you look at the dental field right now, the whole idea with these insurance companies constricting our prophylactic reimbursements is the only option is to do half-hour hygiene or to have the doctor associate do it quickly to find dental work. And
Mm-hmm.
my whole thought for myself and my family, why can't we get to health and then maintain it?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, I was realizing this whole concept doesn't work if you're following the insurance constraints. But then it's scary to go out and network and tell patients, we don't accept your insurance. You have to pay in full. You get the check in 2 weeks. And if they have 5 or 6 people in their family, a lot of them weren't doing that.
Yeah.
So I tried one of the membership programs outside, and that was a huge disaster for me in terms of keeping track of production, collections, and who was going on.
Mm-hmm.
So we came up with a solution of if I know exactly what the fees are going to be based off how many times a year they come, because all my fees are the same. Now I know if you're 3 times a year, 4 times a year, 5 times a year, this is exactly how much you're going to cost. And if we divide that by 12, hey, Mrs. Jones, because you come 3 times a year, your monthly fee is this. So there's no discount to hygiene, exam, and x-rays. But if you sign up and you prepay, then all of a sudden you're building up a piggy bank of money where when you come in your next visit, you're not going to owe anything for your prevention. So
Mm-hmm.
instead of like discounting everything, I'm just basically giving them a defined dollar amount of what their costs are, where there's no surprises. Because in this day and age where all of our fees are all based off of monthly fees anyways, it's the unknown and the uncertainty of scariness of, oh my God, this can be something I can afford. I'm just going to go somewhere else. But we found that if you actually tell them exactly the fee of what to expect, then all of a sudden it's not scary. It becomes like a number that they can wrap their head around of like, that's doable. Or,
Mm-hmm.
as much as I love you guys, that still can't do that. We understand. But we found
Yeah.
that if you actually define what that monthly fee is, then people know like, no, I could do that. And then our goal is like, if you have the best providers and best care, why do they need to be finding anywhere else if we're talking prevention and avoiding problems? And that's been a really huge shift for us of the confidence to say, you know what, it's okay for us to stand up for what's right. It's okay for us to include salivary diagnostics, soft tissue dialaser, probiotics, and talk about a 4 to 6 week follow-up in all of our scale and root plane patients where that's just how we do it. There's no upsell,
Mm-hmm.
there's no chances of letting the patient decide treatment. Like if we're going to nick this in the butt now and get you healthy, this is what we know works. And then all of a sudden, this confidence between the team of like, we're not messing around. Our fees are listed at when you walk in, and it's only one fee for a filling, right? It's not if I do an OL, we're going to add 20 more dollars. No, it's one fee. And this like simplicity of approaching dentistry that's not really what I was introduced to in the beginning has been such a way of freedom where people know what the fees are. They can go third party
Mm-hmm.
financing, or they can save up and knowing in the future what's going on. So, like the other thing we're trying to do is if you're prepaying into the account, if you move or you leave, then you can just have your money back. It's no problem. But we're also offering a 10% off if you basically if you sign up for your prepayments for your prevention, we're basically saying then you're preventative and you're catching things early, then you're not waiting for problems. Then the VAP allows them to have 10% off any treatment plus third-party financing. Versus when we did the other third-party financing membership programs, it was 20% off the top. But then we said, well, we can't afford to do care credit on top of that. That's almost like a 30%
Mm-hmm.
hit. So what
So
we've
do
been trying to,
you
yeah,
do you sorry, so your patients that are on your plan, do they just like auto pay every month then?
yeah.
Oh, okay, okay.
And so
And
now
that's
we've even made it for patients with or without insurance. So then all of a sudden, if you're Delta
okay.
and you're prepaying, now all of a sudden it's not scary of how many hundreds of dollars for one visit twice a year. You know, if
Mm-hmm.
you look at people what they're spending on their personal lives in terms of their hair, their nails, their car, and all that
Oh
stuff,
no.
it's everything's expensive.
Is it
But
mine?
if you
Maybe it
want
is.
best care and you want your health to be healthy, so we're even allowing them because we're finding that patients that want great care, they're going to want great hygiene and they're also going to want great restorative work,
Mm-hmm.
right? If we're trying to advertise $99 a month to try to bring volume in, and then we say, okay, we're out of network and here's what our fees are, we're finding a lot of times those patients aren't staying around for long-term care.
Yeah.
And when they come into the office and they're having a connection with their hygienist in terms of their medications, their allergies, their home care, but often it's the personal lives. There's an hour of connection and there's an hour of like, hey, we're going to get you healthier. And hey, Mrs. Jones, you're looking so much better today. Keep it up. Like that whole concept of taking time, as you guys know, with what Brian's going through and Ashley with oral
Yeah.
cancer, of like those little things that get skipped over when you're rushed through hygiene and you don't have
Mm-hmm.
time to do it. They're exhausted, they're burnout. The first thing that go is paracharting, blood pressure, oral cancer screening, airway exam, occlusal analysis, all those things that they can really provide to the patient care,
Mm-hmm.
it goes out the window. And so that's kind of where I'm trying to really fight against what the norm is for us and stop taking everything on ourselves as a doctor and start allowing your team to be great. And if it financially allows a 30-year practice that's hygiene anyways, if they're flourishing, oh my God, like to have hygienists that are happy and then staff that supports them and the training and
Mm-hmm.
education with oral systemic connection and salivary diagnostics, it's unbelievable what they're actually able to attribute for patient care. So that's kind of where we rebranded about a year ago to 323 was to represent the ideal gum pocket measurements of 323, 323, 323, of just showing people that if we have the great people and caring for you on a regular basis and you're avoiding surprises, we don't expect anything less other than health. Things
Yeah.
are great. We'll see you later. And what I'm finding is people are like, well, how are you ever going to run a practice if everyone stays healthy? And what I'm finding is that if people are coming back healthy and they're happy and no more problems, that's a win for me and the patient's happy. And guess what? Now the doctor has room for more new patients to be able to see patients that need to go from unhealthy to healthy. And it's
Mm-hmm.
sad to say how many people in this world are still going to have disease, whether you want it or not. But what better way than it being a new patient rather than people that you've been caring for 10 years that still have problems? So to
Mm-hmm.
like sit there and be so proud that every hygiene check looked great, no more work, all of a sudden we're like, this is fantastic. That's what I want. Are you at your recare?
Mm-hmm.
You're healthy. With these systemic diseases, what can we do for oral health to keep people healthy? And it's honesty and it's upfront and it's prevention. You got to be proactive.
Hey friends, I want to give a quick shout out to our partner, Net32. As a practice owner, I know how much time, energy, and money goes into keeping the supply side of your business running. So many little orders, so many brands, so many choices. Net32 is a marketplace built for us. So you save on over 60,000 dental products all in one place, which means you get real pricing transparency and savings. Whether you're just getting started or scaling up into multiple locations, tools like this make a huge difference. And for a community like ours, building smarter, growing faster, that's meaningful. Check them out at net32.com/the making of and let them help you streamline the back end so you can focus on patients, team, and the big vision. Thanks to Net32 for supporting the making of. Let's get back to the show.
I have so many questions. I feel like just with what you were just saying, though, about having really healthy patients. And, obviously, I don't think any dentist wants to be doing MODOs, DOMO all day long, anyways. And you
Yeah.
had mentioned doing the AACD when we first started talking. So, does that also free up your time to do a lot of those kind of cases for things that you want to be doing, right? Like you
Yeah.
can do the full mouth rehabs or the cosmetic stuff too if you're not so bogged down with crowns and class two fillings all day.
Yeah, it was interesting when I was at the Bulletproof and we did a conference on what really lights you up. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know if it's because of being a captain on my volleyball team or what, but like the idea of empowering my team to do bigger things was so much more gratifying to me than restorative work
Okay.
that I'm to the point now where like I would much rather be making things better in the office and improving systems and making the environment better for other people to flourish
Hmm.
where there is a plan for me to start backing out of clinical just because I want to keep what's happening. Like to really, I mean, the more you look at your systems, the more you look at your practice in your office, the more you realize how many problems there are.
Hmm.
And to document and to systemize and things that I had done 5 years ago are like, where did everything go? How are people not realizing that those are still things we got to stay with? So I think all the improvements and enhancement in the office take a full-time attention, and that's really where I'm realizing my biggest impact on having 11 employees that are flourishing times how many patients. That's a bigger impact to me than one Brian and how many patients a day I see.
Hmm.
So I'm realizing that the cosmetic dentistry is not really what lights me up, and helping other people in my office make a bigger changes.
And I mean, I hate to say this because I think there probably are people that can do really well at both, but you
Yeah,
will often hear people too say that like you're really good at like running the practice or you're really good at like doing the treatment in the practice, right? Like trying to
yeah,
do both is very difficult. So if you do like being the captain, like you said, I mean, it does take a lot of time, right? And you really have to spend time with your employees and you're letting them do their thing too. But you had mentioned earlier just about the front office, the mail situation, which if you're 8 hours in someone's mouth is going to be really
yeah,
difficult for you to follow up with, right?
yeah,
Um, so as far as like systems and procedures, like you were talking about, I feel like that's always like a big question for our startup docs who have no idea to where to even start. And you had
yeah.
mentioned kind of starting with like the goal in mind and working backwards. So what do you think would be just like your best piece of advice for like startup docs to kind of get to where they think they want to be?
Yeah. I think the biggest eye opener for me was you can get a fee schedule guide of what an 50, 60, 70, 80, 90th percentile dentist in your area charges.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a huge thing for me that when I actually ran my fees that I was charging, I was in like the 50, sometimes 40, sometimes 60th percentile and
Okay.
going, oh my God, like I was feeling bad charging these fees and then realizing that my self-limiting beliefs of like how much someone should pay for this stuff gets in way a lot, right? Like my want is
Mm-hmm.
people not to say no or to complain about fees. I want to just please everyone in terms of patience. But realizing that you have to run a business and you have numbers, it's a very hard thing to start feeling like we have to take care of ourselves and what this looks like. You know, it's a hard thing as a new doc setting fees. But my
Mm-hmm.
biggest advice looking back now is it didn't matter that I was serving so many patients, working 6 days a week, working my butt off. When you're not making a profit based off those insurance constraints, it doesn't matter how much volume you have coming through. It'd be much better being slower and being profitable and doing a great job that patients want to come back than trying just to fill the chair just to get someone in the chair, right? I know there's a lot of volume offices that are out there, and I think whatever that doctor feels is most important to them, I think you have to listen to yourself because some people like that volume. And I think that's
Mm-hmm.
where Bulletproof really went into who are you and what kind of values and what things make you tick and thrive. There was a huge book I read that was The E-Myth Revisited, where they talk
Okay.
about the whole concept and notion of owning your own business. Just because you're good at baking cookies or making flowers, society tells you then you should open up your own business and you should do cookies and flowers as your business. And the E myth, the E stands for entrepreneurial, that when you read that book and you realize, I want to do my own dental office, all of a sudden you're not actually running your office, you're actually becoming an employee to the practice. So I think my biggest piece of advice is to do some soul searching as to what makes you thrive and tick and where you're happiest. And then go learn from docs or go learn from different industries that teach you how to stay in that lane. I think too often
Mm-hmm.
we get fantasized by these ideas of these practices that are, claiming they're doing all these great things like placing implants and doing that. That may not be your best way of investing in money.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes investing money in terms of leadership or in terms of different ways of doing things. I think that's my biggest piece of advice is don't just follow someone else, is do some soul searching of what makes you happy and then build around that. And that's where I think it's okay to not be great at everything. So
Yeah.
I think that was my biggest learning curve over time was instead of doing it all myself, it's better to find people that really love doing that stuff and letting them thrive. And then all of a sudden they're contributing their best efforts to something that you're not even great at. And instead of just trying to get 10% better at something you're not good at, it's much better to let someone else add to that. So
Yeah.
that'd be what I would say.
So where do you find these really great employees, Ryan?
Yeah.
I'm sure it's been ups and downs, right? Like you've
Yeah.
probably had to go through people to find your tribe at your office. But
Yeah.
how have you done that? Because that is, I mean, I think that's every doctor I know has
Yeah.
that problem. You know,
Yeah.
the
I
people you
think,
think that'll be there for forever maybe aren't, and vice versa. And turnover happens. So
yeah.
how are you finding these people? Are you investing time into them? Do you kind of know off the bat when you're
Yeah.
interviewing them, or if they've been with you 60,
I
90
think
days, whatever it is?
there's no secret recipe.
Dang
That
it.
was probably the hardest part of startup was
Yeah.
how come these employees don't want it as much as I do? And
Mm-hmm.
what I realized from my business groups is they don't have to. They didn't sign up to own it. You did. And so what I'm realizing now is that that whole saying of hire slow and fire fast is 100%. But the whole concept where a lot of times my expectations as an employer wasn't defined. There either wasn't proper training, there wasn't proper feedback, there wasn't proper documentation, there wasn't clearly defined expectations was the
Yeah.
biggest miscommunication from my part as the owner. And
Okay.
instead of getting mad something didn't get right, all of a sudden these are reflections on myself as the boss. What could I have done better to communicate what I expected?
Mm-hmm.
So right now we're trying to get into the training of video recording every step of everything to not only one help onboarding of letting them see all
Yeah.
the systems before they get in, but also two of updating things with expectations. If things change, all of a sudden you can actually assign that to certain employees that if they're not there that day or they missed a week, they
Mm-hmm.
still are held responsible for that information to keep everyone current. And I think that's really my next chapter when I talk about stepping back from some of the clinical is
Mm-hmm.
becoming better at the communication so that these people that are great people, maybe it's something in the way that I could have done something differently, they would have thrived. Or maybe it's
Mm-hmm.
the seat they're in that could have been a
Yeah.
different position in that they could have contributed 10 times more. So looking back now at oh my God, 80 or so people that I've had to let go in the
Okay.
last 10 years, it's
Uh-huh.
hard. It's not easy. And we're still right now looking for another RDA. And I think what
Okay.
I'm realizing now or learning is that I used to just need to hire someone right away and I would just take the next person. And
Mm-hmm.
what I'm finding now is I'd rather struggle a little longer to find the right person than it is to just jump in and hire someone right away without being the right fit.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess my feedback is clearly defining how to help them be successful, have more check-ins with them and more feedback. But also too is there's also a thing in the group I'm in that basically talks about the culture of your office should be its own HR system. And when I attract A players, do I get more A players that are not going to put up with things that don't fit with what we're all about? So instead of it being all me as the boss saying, you didn't do this right, you're not the right fit, you're out of here, it's more of my team filtering through of like, we think they're great. They're hardworking, they're contributing, they're helping with things we want them. Or the team is saying, hey, listen, it's not quite the right fit for us. Doesn't mean you're not a
Mm-hmm.
good person. It just means that it's not the right fit. Nothing personal. We wish you the best. But all of a sudden, as I'm getting more experience this, the more I'm realizing that the team is what the culture is the strongest and most valuable part of what I've created and not about an individual. And to separate my feelings of just because they weren't the right fit for the office doesn't mean they're a bad person or they're not going to find a job somewhere else that may be better fit for them anyways.
Mm-hmm.
So trying to separate the emotional part from that has been a learning curve. But I think having an HR reference point, someone to call in terms of we worked with Cedar for a little bit, CEDR.
Okay.
Now we're working with
Yeah.
Gusto. They have a couple of different ways of like making sure you're doing the right things and making sure you're doing things legally as well, especially being in California, that there's been a lot of things of learning curve of like, oh, well, I'm not going to do that next time.
I
Um,
was just gonna say, yeah, because we're in California too, and talking to docs that are like, I don't know, out of state is so different,
yeah.
HR wise.
Yeah.
It's
And then
crazy.
as you get an adult, it's like, this is the real world. You put your head down and you
Mm-hmm.
do your day in, day out, and you don't complain. But having the freedom to dream and figure out where you want to go and why is a really big North Star. And it's really been something that, especially for dentists, deciding what direction they want to go in, of knowing who they are and if they want to be more oral surgery based or more implant based or more cosmetic based, but what kind of team around you and what kind of days do you want and how many hours a day do you want to work, and
Yeah.
really defining that, I think, is the best way to find happiness. Because at the end of
Hmm.
the day, more practices, more employees, more patients, it never gave happiness to me. My
Which
goal
is,
right now is to see, can I add value to that employee to make them more meaningful to the office?
hmm
So that's kind of how I look at that on that end. Um, but yeah, the next steps for me as we continue to do that is to, how do I make this something that becomes more than just a practice, but more of a statement that it's a way that's working.
hmm
So I bought an old house right behind my office on a hill about 2020, 2021, and it's been about 4 years of trying to figure out with the city in terms of oak trees and ADA access and hillside that this wasn't quite as easy as I expected to just put a building down and build a dental office. But after the third attempt, we finally got some approval from the fire department last week. So we're going to go to
Oh,
formal construction documents and engineering and get this thing going. So I'm hoping in the next 2 years, we're going to have a ground up dental office. So this next chapter is going to be hopefully learning from all of you that have built something out and trying to understand what that component looks like as well.
so wait, you said you bought the house, the land 4 years ago, and
Mhm.
it's taken that long for city permits and everything?
Yes,
Or,
because the oak trees are a huge issue in terms of protection. The
okay,
hillside review, ADA access, it's a flag lot, so it's 1.27 acres off the main drag of old downtown,
okay,
but they want an ADA wheelchair access all the way up it. And so trying to calculate that with the driveway and fire department access is great for an architect to draw something, but if it doesn't add up or it doesn't meet standards, it doesn't happen. So we finally have learned a lot over the last 4 years of due diligence of
okay.
what to not do and what to do. That it's pretty exciting now turning that chapter of going to construction documents, having basically an overview of the site plan and the driveway and fire department approval with the width of the driveway. So that's kind of my next chapter of something that I'm really excited about and hoping to
So,
learn
yeah,
more.
let's go back to the very beginning, actually, because we kind of skipped over things. The
Yeah.
practice that you bought was 360, correct? Dentistry,
The practice I
dental,
bought was
or
called a unique dental experience, and I
okay,
renamed it to 360 Dentistry
okay,
about a year afterwards.
got you. But now you rebranded
Yeah.
from 360 to 323.
Yeah. And that was
Okay.
the 360's concept was like if you start something, finish it, the whole body,
Hmm.
comprehensive care, like the whole person. It was like the whole want of the big picture to be all together.
Okay.
And then when we started making this new practice in terms of hygiene being the cornerstone of prevention and how do I make a profitable model for me to want people to not need work and to just be in hygiene, it
Hmm.
became a new brand, a new logo, a new direction, and a whole new thought process to where we're
Got
going.
you.
That's when we
Hmm.
dropped insurance contract, raised the fees, made this VIP membership plan, and then said, you know what? Not only this is we're going to actually build this for this new office location.
Hmm.
The idea was, what is that name going to be and represent it? And the 323 of the gun pocket measurements was a smooth transition from 360 to 323, but also
Got you.
to yeah, was there's an orthodontist that opened up down the way called 360 Ortho that we didn't want to be tied with anyway. So we thought, you know what, let's just go for it. Let's just rip the band-aid off and make this whole brand new practice reality. And we kind of did a rebranding of opening event about a year ago, and we're getting our website remade right now. So we're trying to make this whole practice, visible in marketing. I know you guys have talked a lot about those different components to a practice. So those are parts that we're now focusing on. So
That's amazing. Congratulations that you're like this much
thank you.
closer now. So you're
Yeah.
hoping in 2 years is when that location will be done.
That's the hope. We'll see
Okay.
what timing looks like with city and all the pushbacks for entitlements, but as of right now, that'd be the goal.
Tell me a little bit about that space. How big's it going to be? Like, what are your dreams for it? How many ops? All the
Yeah.
things.
So as of right now, it's 31 parking spaces, 4,000 square foot dental office, and then on the
Hmm.
top, it's about 3,200 square feet. It has a patio off of it, so I'm not sure if it's going to be an event center, for hosting
Okay.
CE events and
Yeah.
continue to teach and keep progressing. or if it's going to be, business suites. But as of right now, the idea is making it more of an education center or CE events or something to continue to spread whatever we can to help hygienists,
Mm-hmm.
dentists thriving. And yeah, so it's a 1.27 acres, and it's a really cool spot that overlooks all the downtown of Newhall, which is kind of like the heart of the old main part of town. And
Mm-hmm.
it's right behind my existing dental office. So I figured no better place to move to than something that the patients are already used to driving to.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also realizing that my ability to dream and think things through and like have a direction, I guess, is not quite like everyone else. And so I'm realizing that sometimes including the team or my family members in like why and what and how has also been a good learning curve for me to just go for it, but at the same time frame, include them along the way.
Mm-hmm.
So,
There's like visionaries and integrators. You need
right.
both. You need a
Yeah.
little help. Okay, so I was trying to think about this and I was like, I feel like you would be really great in helping the startup docs kind of understand maybe the best time to bring on a hygienist too, because as you know,
Yeah.
most startup docs don't start with a hygienist. It's just them. They're doing all the hygiene. And the question is always like, when do you bring on a hygienist? And you're doing a lot of things that I think offices want to do with like the saliva and like just the biofilm and everything. So can you just tell me a little bit of like maybe how a startup doc could get into that? Um,
Yeah.
because everyone wants to do more whole body stuff now.
Yeah. Oh, there's a lot of questions there. My,
Sorry, let's start
my,
with
no, no,
bringing on
no.
a hygienist.
Yeah. My thought would be as soon as you can have your hygienist produce enough to cover them, their
Mm-hmm.
expenses, I would bring them on.
Okay. So
And the
not
reason,
necessarily the 3 times.
yep. And the reason why
Okay.
is because as soon as all of a sudden you don't have Profi on your own schedule and they take it off your plate, now your days are open for more restorative work or things that are
Mm-hmm.
more productive anyways. That I was always scared to add more hygiene days. And that's kind of where like I've been trying to get the message out about this because I made the mistake of going volume and insurance based. And then when
Mm-hmm.
I decided, well, if I'm going to do hygiene the right way, the costs are way too big. So then when I got rid of my insurance contracts and had to pay everyone full time of service, I lost a third to half my practice, but
Mm-hmm.
we're just as collective as we were before. So
Yeah.
I think defining where you want to go first before you start growing and making changes and decisions, I think that's the biggest thing you can do is how big do I want to get and what are my fees going to be?
Mm-hmm.
Because once you decide that, then you can decide does it make sense to financially bring them on or not. I wish I wouldn't have just gone volume and then cut back because now I'm giving my patients mixed messages of like, oh, don't worry, you don't pay anything, leave it, your insurance covers everything. And now we're saying, well, the insurance
Mm-hmm.
only covers so much and they won't send us the check, so you have to pay in full. They get really confused. For the GBT, that was something that I actually just called the GBT local rep.
Mm-hmm.
They now are offering, we actually had the first ever on the West Coast training in our office in
Oh,
January
cool.
where there's about 10 to 12 seats that you can pay for, I think, a couple $100. You can actually get the full day experience and training of the GBT. They don't
Mm-hmm.
do it on patient care, but are doing it on mannequins. So you
Okay.
can reach out to them for training that way. Salivary diagnostics, I would say CE and online is basically the best way of learning some of that. What
Do
about
you do that
the
for
portal?
every patient then?
We don't. We
Okay.
do it for anyone that needs, if it's scaling with gingival inflammation or needs scale and
Mm-hmm.
root plane. If we are
Mm-hmm.
doing any scale and root plane, it's just included in the fee. So we're only doing a pre-test at one point, but then we found out that, okay, if they come at 4 to 6 weeks and we think they're healthy, what if they relapse? And what we're
Mm-hmm.
finding is if we retest at 4 to 6 weeks, even if they're looking healthy, they still have some underlying bacterial issues and viral issues that could still be going on that are kind of masked that they're
Mm-hmm.
healthy, but yet they're more at risk for relapsing. And so my hygienists that are seeing these saliva tests before and after are absolutely incredible at what they're learning in terms of helping the patient understand their body, helping them understand what they're up against, and then also letting these
Yeah.
hygienists know is just because the patient didn't get healthy doesn't mean you're a terrible hygienist. What you're up against in terms of the mouth and your ability to see them only a couple of
Mm-hmm.
hours that you want to change their whole biofilm in their mouth and expect them to be perfect is, I think, unrealistic. And I think
Yeah.
sometimes these hygienists have this feeling that if they weren't healthy, oh my God, I did something wrong. And it
Mm-hmm.
gives us so much information and knowing where's it coming from, what's going on, what's happening, even the standpoint of strep mutans and caries risk and acidic biofilm that's happening around there as well. It's so informative. So
Mm-hmm.
if you want to kind of get started on that, I think the salivary diagnostics has been biggest game changer.
Okay.
But the GBT is hands down the best thing I have ever introduced to my practice.
Okay.
And the reason why is fatigue of the hygienist, their neck, their back, their hands improves. But they get so, when a hygienist gets calculus off, they get excited. The whole mouth becomes that. And you're getting
Mm-hmm.
the biofilm off and seeing all that stain come off and all the biofilm come off with spraying the water. It's really powerful, but even more so the education to the patient of taking the beforehand picture, finishing up your procedure, and then putting the after picture on the screen and then showing them
Mm-hmm.
like, hey, we had talked about some of these areas that you're having more inflammation. Look at where we're finding the biofilm and the bacteria build up. This is where you're missing it with your water pick, your floss, your toothbrush. And they're like, oh, they take so much more accountability themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Mm-hmm.
realizing that, hey, maybe if I did come a little bit more often, that wouldn't be building up as much and I wouldn't get bleeding and inflammation and we could hopefully avoid it from hurting, as opposed
Yeah.
to it only hurt and bled because you touched me with the scaler, the sharp thing. When we say, well, hey, it's bleeding and we're just using water, that's not a normal thing. So I think the GBT for me was the biggest, but it's also the biggest risk because financially it's a huge thing that you have to
Yeah.
make sure. For a while there, I wasn't making enough money to cover it. And then it became like, oh, shoot, I either have to completely adapt this and embrace this theory of how I'm treating patients,
Mm-hmm.
or I got to get rid of it and go back to the other way.
Got you.
So
What else are you guys doing for your recare patients between those
we're
two
doing
things?
soft tissue dialaser. We're talking about
Okay.
dry mouth a lot.
Yeah.
And we're also talking about carie-free, Canberra, trying to talk about
Okay.
caries risk assessment in terms of
Yeah.
prevention. There's so much now we're talking about gum health and prevention. Now, what can we talk about teeth health and prevention?
Yeah.
The other thing too is the concept when these patients are healthy with their gums, what's happening with the occlusion and the alignment of their teeth?
Yeah. Are
So
you
we did have
scanning?
we have our
Yeah.
hygienists trained to scan the iTero and talk about the
Uh-huh.
alignment and Invisalign or braces and what impact that can make long term of avoiding a fractured tooth or avoiding that problem area where your food's getting trapped.
Yeah.
It's been such a way of building that trust over time that not everything has to come at once. But
Mm-hmm.
the other thing we've introduced recently that we were really hesitant at first was the ParaProtect trays and this
Okay.
notion of like they're going to pay how much for hydrogen peroxide trays. But it's been incredible of people accepting treatment after they've come so far of getting healthy that clinically we're seeing really good results with it. That my
Okay.
hygienists now are backing it because of clinical results rather
Mm-hmm.
than feeling like, oh man, we're upcharging for another thing. And that's my
Mm-hmm.
biggest thing is like, I am never going to push you to hit numbers based off of upselling. If the patient doesn't need it, they don't need it. But what we're finding for a lot of these patients, even before scale and replaying or maintenance afterwards, is by breaking down the biofilm and breaking down the calculus so it's softer, we're getting a lot of patients that are a lot less bleeding, a lot more. I guess we had tried everything to kind of get them maintained, even on a 3 month recare. But as soon
Yeah.
as you say like, hey, the downside or like the byproduct of this ParaProtect tray is that your teeth are going to get whitened, it's pretty incredible. A patient's like, oh, it's 10 minutes a day in the shower and oh, I'll do that and it whitens my teeth. I mean, it's kind of sad to say we've like talked about disease and infection, but they're like, hey, whiten my teeth for sure, we'll do it.
It's
So
always the whitening the teeth, right?
it always does. But that's been a product that's surprised me as how well it's
Okay.
been doing in terms of prevention. So yeah, that's been a really good change for us too. We
Mm-hmm.
never do scale and replay in the same visit as their new patient exam, but I do give them the freedom that if the patient needs education and you only got, the GBT or very little work done, then the initial cleaning could be no charge because when you talk about gum disease, when they don't have pain and don't have problems, sometimes they say like it's going to be 4 visits plus a fifth visit to check it. And like we're talking salivary diagnostics, lasers, probiotics, we're talking about systemic health. Some of these patients just need time to digest the information.
Yeah.
So instead of a bait and switch feeling of like picking up anesthetic and get going, I'd much rather the connection, the understanding come first. And I think that's something that a good advice to doctors that are looking to get their hygienist for the first time is you have to have time to calibrate what is expected at certain procedures and what do you
Mm-hmm.
want out of your patient care.
Mm-hmm.
because if it's not well defined, there can be a lot of strain on that doctor hygienist relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the number one thing where I think that we start dividing the two parts of the profession. And that's where we're trying to glue them back together in the 323 idea is that we can actually get along, but we have to
Yeah.
understand that the hygienist is there to help the dentist and the dentist is there to support the hygienist. Sometimes when we have 45 other things going on, it doesn't feel that way. And that's where like setting aside time that's non-clinical to sit down and actually talk about things and talk about solutions before they become problems is the
Mm-hmm.
number one way you can get your hygienist and doctor on the same page of supporting each other. Because it's incredible when you have co-diagnostic, the hygienist is taking intraoral photos or iTero scanning, and I didn't have to say anything. They just already said, hey, we've already talked to the patient. These are the issues that's going on. Oh my God, that's so helpful. But the other advice I have for doctors is what I've said is as long as I've calibrated my hygienist where we're on the same page, when I walk in there, I just say, hey, how was everything today? And the hygienist has just spent a whole hour with them. They tell me everything that's going on. And I say, okay, great.
Mm-hmm.
What sounds next? And whether it be a follow-up Prophy 2 visit or whether it be 6 quads SRP in a 6 week visit, whether it be 6 month, I have someone on a 9 month interval. Based off what they saw, what is the best recommendation? And you know what I say? I think that looks great. Some
I
dentists are
love
like, well, they
that.
can't diagnose. But let me tell you what, after that's their whole career, their whole profession, and the whole hour, the more you support what they're recommending,
Mm-hmm.
all of a sudden, like they feel confident and they want to
Yeah.
share what's better. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I push back. Well, you said that there's some bleeding and some soreness. What interval are they on? They're on 4 months. Have we considered 3 months? Have we considered Invisalign? Is the patient open to paraproject trays? Because sometimes it's easier for me to support them when I
Yeah.
bring those things up. Just like if they bring up a crown or a bridge or veneers versus me, it seems like we're both suggesting things to help as opposed to upselling to improve just my production. So I think setting aside time, we do right now once a month hygiene 1 hour meetings to take away a patient appointment. And we bring all the
Okay.
hygienists together to kind of talk about some of the results on salivary testing, what materials are needed, supplies, discussions on thought process theories, any new things going on. And we've been talking a little bit about ozone. So it's a great way to also talk about the up and coming, but also too, like
Yeah.
what issues are we having that we could communicate better? So
I love that. Is it with the doctors and the hygienist or with you and the hygienist?
it's with the hygienist and the lead. They meet
Okay.
together, and then we also have a meeting where like the lead hygienist brings that to the table. So getting
Gotcha.
cadence of regular meetings that don't fall off
Yeah.
has been over the last year of like we would do it for a little bit and then they would go away.
Yeah.
So making
We're
sure that
guilty of that too.
yep, and making sure that they just stay on the schedule and then make sure that they
Yeah.
get repeated. So trying to set up some of those regular cadences has definitely been part of this journey of repeatability and making sure that things that
Mm-hmm.
were working keep working.
Mm-hmm. That's
Yeah.
amazing. That's perfect. Yeah, we've tried so many different meeting schedules and things too. And it's really hard after a while and patience and you're like booked and stuff. But I
Yep.
think that's a great just reminder for everyone to make sure that they are checking in regularly with
Yeah.
their hygienist assistants, front office, everybody. Do you have anything that you want to ask the group? I feel like you've given us so many tidbits and suggestions and all the things.
Hmm.
But how about you? Is there something I can pose to the group?
I would
Didn't know I
say
was going to ask that, huh?
that's okay. That's good. I would say, what's the best piece of advice if I am building a dental office as to, uh, let's say 3 years ago, I actually designed the interior part of a design build that didn't work out. So I've already kind of
Okay.
gone through some of that with some of the companies. Talk about going with Henry Scheiner Patterson and then going into other companies that you pay for it. What would be the best piece of advice moving forward if I've got this startup shell as to the direction of cabinetry, no cabinetry, how many ops,
Okay.
where would you start if you're starting over from scratch in terms of advice? So right
Okay.
now, Joe Architect is who I've been talking to about working with,
Yes. We love them.
and
Felipe.
Felipe. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's awesome.
Love Felipe.
So, and then Ben Oliver now at Henry Schein, he's been my guy. And then I've also had a GC guy that I really liked. But that I guess that's my biggest thing is I just need help
Okay.
with that direction. So yeah.
It's interesting. I love your story because you have the practice, but now you're like building from ground up a new practice. So it's
Mhm.
almost like reverse, right?
Yep.
I love
And
it.
I think that that's one of the things I wish if I was a new doc. is you always start with things you think you can afford.
Mm-hmm.
And when I lost everything with the first practice, I like literally was like, the only place I can buy is this 2 half days a week, gone for 10 months. No one wants to buy it. I can at least get an equipment loan and I'll start from scratch.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, I was listening to a lot of Mark Costas' stuff about like find something little and then build into it and grow it. And I think what I would wish I would have done now, or if I knew now what I knew, didn't know then, would be
Yeah.
to find something that's not in the red and actually in the green, it's profitable, that the bank will lend you money on. And being around a business group where there's people from other industries, none of them just take all the risk on themselves and take on the money on themselves. They find financing to afford it so that way they're not struggling from the start. And I think that always not having that money to then do the next step has always been like so exhausting to finally get ahead of
Yeah.
things. And like
Mm-hmm.
now, as we look to this next part of building the building, working with Live Oak and SBA has been like, oh my gosh, like they do actually lend and they do help with that. That I think that that'd be what I would say is like, if you can define what direction you want to go with all this
Yeah.
and figure out what would be a dream of a practice, how do you go for that as quickly as you can instead of just feeling like I'll start here and then I'll keep adding to it and growing to it versus sometimes you could have actually done 2 steps ahead if you had just
Yeah.
asked around, called around, or asked, other docs that have done it before, what other opportunities could there be?
Yeah, for sure. There's so many different ways to do it, right? But at the end of the day, you guys are all aiming for the same thing. It's just, yeah, there's so many different ways.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time today. I love hearing your story, even though I'm sorry it was a tough beginning for you. But you're such
Well,
like the epitome of, like we say around here, pivot a lot. You've
yeah.
had to do quite a few pivots, and you've just come out on the other side of it with such like a great perspective on everything. And it just sounds like everything you're doing now is really working towards where you want to be.
Yeah. I appreciate that. That's the biggest compliment. Pivoting instead of reacting and getting down is a very big change, and it's a very big learning curve that we all go through,
Yeah.
or hope we go through. There was this saying that really kind of changed it for me that said, if you're not sharing your story with the world, you're being selfish. And putting yourself on social media or putting yourself in front of a camera is not something I was ever comfortable with. But as soon as I started seeing that there may be someone 10 steps behind, 1 step behind, 20 steps behind, that
Yeah.
all these things that I've been through, that I was definitely embarrassed by and felt like I was the only one running into these problems and
Yeah.
having these issues, it felt like why would I ever want to share that with anyone else? Like that's embarrassing. But then now realizing that, oh my God, if I was getting out of dental school now, I sure as hell hope I would be learning from what Brian did wrong so I don't make that same mistake. Or
Hmm.
if you did find a way to get out of insurance, or you did find a way to get that great hygienist, everyone can know like when you think of like a great hygienist, there's a certain name that pops out that like, oh my God, she was absolutely fantastic. How do you keep more of those around? And that's like
Yeah.
my biggest thing was like, don't make it about myself, make it about helping other people. And so
Hmm.
pivoting always became like, I'm not going to give up. I'm just going to keep going. And then now at this point, it's like, I'm okay with not being perfect. I'm okay with making mistakes. I'm okay with admitting I should have done something better. And I think if I'm learning from it and moving in a different direction, that's a good thing. That's a win. But if I just
Yeah.
let it shut me down or complain about it, that's not pivoting. That's just not helpful. So I think that's getting around bigger rooms and getting around other people that can make you see things bigger than where you're at,
Yeah.
has also been a really great learning curve for me to realize that this little problem of insurance or that this flood happened, go find bigger problems. It's just
Yeah.
water. It's a shutdown. You have insurance. You got your team. Just deal with it. And so
Yeah.
try not be reactive and just letting things go and find solutions or people that can help you find solutions. I think being around other people that are doing big, great things is a really cool thing.
Hmm.
And the making of stands for that. And that's what this support system of like, I hope this next chapter of building it, you guys can help me out just as much as maybe I could help you guys out.
I love that. That's my favorite part about what I do is the community
Yeah.
and helping people pivot because being with Ashley the last going on 7 years, we've done a lot of pivoting. I mean, I think that's just life in general. And I'm starting to see that the people I really look up to and that are super successful at what they're doing are really great at pivoting. Like you said, you just have to. There's other problems. There's always going to be a problem. So
Well,
make the
that's
most of
that's a
this one.
huge
And
point because I thought when I owned my business, it get to the point I finally have everything dialed in.
no,
And now understanding that every 6 months or every year that you're growing and changing, everything changes with it, and the problems will always come. It's just my
Yeah.
job as a CEO to figure out like which fire in the kitchen needs to get put out, not necessarily
Mhm.
a fire in, the entryway. Like
Yeah.
which area can you start with first? But now importantly too, like how do I maybe prevent the fire? How do I line things up so I don't have to worry about putting out fires? So it's a prevention strategy with the office as well, that's for sure.
Yes, that's a good point.
Right?
Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it a lot. Please tell me, where can everyone find you?
On
Instagram,
it, yep.
email?
On Instagram at 323 Dentistry, and that's spelled out with letters, not numbers. And yeah, feel free to DM me there, ask me any questions, and if there's anything else I can do to help, feel free to reach out.
Awesome. I will link that in the show notes for everybody.
Cool.
I'm also going to get some of that information from you, Brian, just on the resources that you had mentioned. So, yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Well, thank you for the opportunity, and it was very nice to talk with you.
You as well.
Bye-bye.
Bye.